nothing stops me from making these videos. You know why? It's because you have articles like this, and you have studies that need to be promoted to the public, and there's always so much to talk about. So we must always talk about this and always promote videos, and must always open the conversation, because that's the only way we will truly innovate, is by getting those ideas out there, by showing all the different sides out there, so we can innovate with all the given strategies, so that way we can think outside the box given all the current narratives, and that's how we can think and start innovating for once, instead of just going with the flow. And so what is flowing inside our body is something you must ask within itself. You'll talk about junk food, you'll talk about a lot of gook that stays in there, whether it be rancid fats or whatever it may be. But you also have pesticides. It says common pesticides increase the risk of all-cause mortality. Okay, it says now a new study published in JAMA Internal Medicine indicates that these popular insecticides increase the risk of death due to all causes, including cardiovascular disease. And as you know, in my previous video, especially the video called the Food World Order, you'll see that cardiovascular disease makes up the most premises, the biggest part of our problem here, especially in America with cardiovascular disease. That includes things like heart disease, heart cancer, heart attacks, right? You see cholesterol, you see high blood pressure. All this is cardiovascular disease. Okay, so a lot of stress going up here in the upper body, whether that be through the lungs, whether that be from the breathing, whether that be from the toxins, okay? And there's so many toxins, so pesticides is one of them. And though it says, and compared to people in the lowest third concentration of urine acid levels, this is how they measure for pesticides, people with the highest third concentration were 56% more likely to die of all-cause mortality, cardiovascular disease, and cancer, even after adjusting for age, sex, race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, dietary and lifestyle factors, body mass index, and urinary creatinine levels. Okay, so all that stuff was put into account, and they still found this all-cause mortality of 56% more likely to die from these pesticides in particular is what they're seeing here. And keep in mind that I've also heard from a lot of scientists that actually you can flush out most of these pesticides simply by drinking water. Now that doesn't go necessarily for all pesticides, and clearly there's not a lot of talk, especially on the common issues that perhaps could use more light, I would say. Some common questions that often go overlooked, such as that. But yeah, that is a common clause is, well, yeah, does water actually flush out all the pesticides in your body? But then you also have to keep in mind the herbicides, right? And then the insecticides, you know, you see on corn where they bite it and instantly they die. Certain things, you know, you can't say every pesticide is the same, just like every drug's the same, or every food's the same. That doesn't apply, right? And understanding all those different perspectives is, yeah, okay, certain pesticides are bad, and even certain pesticides in the organic food industry can be bad, because yes, there are organic pesticides, yes, there are regular pesticides, okay, and there still could be problems. So what is the best thing to do? Well, potentially actually just eating local, but we'll actually talk about what we can do here. But it's not just local, right? Maybe it's getting to know your farmer. Maybe it's about asking some of those core questions directly to the farmer, instead of just asking these questions and just speculating upon it. You know, trying to actually connect with the food that we are consuming, whether that be growing it ourselves or connecting with these farmers that do grow it, and starting to grow it for once ourselves perhaps would probably bring us back to our roots, which is what built this nation, which was growing, which was having a family farm and having that as the business. Not saying that has to happen, but necessarily that is the thing that built this nation. That is the thing that, you know, got us to where we are, and you have to acknowledge that. But it says a significant scientific association between, quote, environmental exposure to pyrethroid insecticides and an increased risk of dying. Okay, so they see the association just growing more and more. And it says, and although 100% reduction of your exposure to these chemicals may not be possible because there's always a trace in your blood, it says that there are ways to reduce your family's risk. Like take, for example, the herbicide glyphosate, which is also considered Roundup. And you'll see that in common like weed stores, not weed stores, but you know, warehouses and stuff like that, Lowe's, Home Depot, whatever it may be by you. Of course, I have people listen from all over the world. It's fantastic. But you know, you have like those weed killers, Roundup, particularly created by Monsanto, which if you see my previous video, especially the one that says shocking statistics on health and information, you'll see that Monsanto is one of these big companies behind a lot of the agribusiness, a lot of the seeds that produces a lot of the foods that we see today, a lot of the genetic modification, a lot of the patenting for these pesticides, a lot of the lobbying to keep these things in business and not release these studies publicly. publicly, okay? So regardless of your thoughts, shouldn't this stuff be public? Shouldn't this stuff be more transparent? Then you wouldn't have all this conspiracy to begin with. But it says here are 3 tips to get you started. If you work with or around pesticides or herbicides, or live in an area close to where these chemicals are used, avoid wearing shoes in the house and wash your hands with warm soap and water thoroughly when you enter your home. Then you have to also keep in mind, there's a lot of things being spread in the air. There's a lot of environmental toxins. Some of this stuff goes into the water. You see the bee population is being affected a lot, right? Okay, and then you have to keep in mind the Emf pollution. That's considered pollution, and certainly that we can't entirely control this way. You can't just say, I'm not going to live near it. Now, maybe if in the country you have better exposure, but, less exposure to all this EMF pollution, EMF cancer-causing rays, if you will. But that goes through the sky. This is stuff that you can't see, and yet you can't see these pesticides and herbicides often in your food, too. Some scientists like to refer to it as medical rape, because you try to wash it off your foods, but technically it's still in the foods, it's in the DNA. It turns some of these weeds into super weeds, into super crops, to where they make it easier for the farmer to yield these crops, and they sometimes may claim, okay, well, it gives you greater yield and this, right? It's like a whole package care for the farmer. But keep in mind, this is agribusiness farmers. This isn't some small local farmer who decides to do this. But generally speaking, they may still choose to use pesticides and herbicides, and so that would be somebody who then is exposed or around a lot of these pesticides and herbicides. And as we've seen from recent lawsuits and a lot of different court cases lately, people have won basically suing Monsanto because they saw a correlation with their cancer, they saw a correlation with their problems, and they won the lawsuit. Okay, so you're talking millions of dollars or however much. There's been many lawsuits like this, and there's way more as well. And you have to keep in mind, these companies also want complete legal immunity, not just when it comes to vaccines or these other issues, but when it comes to their own products that they want to protect and that they want to release their own studies on. And then they want to work with the FDA because they're basically becoming one and the same in releasing these chemicals, so that way they can just release their own chemicals, their own studies on their own chemicals. Like, this is an ironic situation. Why release your own studies on your own chemicals? Of course it's going to be biased. Of course it's not going to be objective to where we can view all the different sides of the picture. But no, we only get one narrative, which is, okay, it's safe, don't question it. And if you do, well, you're pseudoscience, or you're a quack, for example, right? But it says buy locally grown or organic produce whenever possible. And I did mention, right, that not all organic is potentially the best. You could look at organic and say, okay, well, it's organic. But guess what? You can look at companies like what is it, Kashi, right? Like Canadian Farms, for example, and those same brands are owned by General Mills. Although those are often the organic brands, those are the same brands owned by General Mills, which is not organic. So they're trying to get these consumers on board. And if you look at a lot of these organic foods, they're laced with so much sugar, right? Because who's going to control that? And the same thing goes with heavy metals, something you can't see in the food, something that affects you, okay? And something that is becoming growing concern, just like EMFs. So keep in mind, yes, pesticides is important, but so is heavy metals, which organic doesn't really talk about at all. Okay, and then so is EMF pollution, which, yes, could still affect the food and the chemistry in your body. There's so much to take into account now, especially with our modern day and age. What could you do? Okay, it's living closer to nature, or eating foods more with nature, foods that contain those natural components that are to protect you from that radiation, that is supposed to power your immune system so you can't get disease from all these external toxins, whatever it may be, whether it be the coronavirus, whatever it be, whatever. Okay, having faith in that, not being too afraid or scared if it does come to you or any of the stuff is around you, okay, and being prepared, being strong in the fact that, yes, you did your research, yes, you are ready, you have rice and beans stored in the house or whatever it may be. Okay, have that stuff now. Be ready, just in case for any situation. What does it hurt? Okay, so that way, yes, maybe you have a greater chance than other people because everybody else is not doing it. Okay, so you are increasing your chances there. And so other thing than that, it says thoroughly wash fruits and vegetables before consuming them. So that generally can still be a good thing because of the bacteria on top, right? But we see that bacteria could actually be very beneficial in many ways, and you see that bacteria that is bad can actually help power your immune system. Ironically, I say there's a lot of ironies to the system, but frankly, being exposed to bad toxins is sometimes good because then it teaches your body how to emerge stronger and which is why sickness can actually be good, getting sick sometimes, but not a whole lot of times. You're talking, you don't ever really have to get sick again, ever, if you eat a healthy diet, if you have a strong immune system. That's how you can tell, and then that's how you can show yourself that, yeah, I'm not going to get cancer down the road. Yeah, I'm not going to get this down the road. Okay, but it's also not getting, sick, not getting sick ever, because then that could be a little concerning, right? Because your body still has to have some of those construction zones, some of those times to break down and say, okay, well, we need to chill out, we need to repair, okay, we need to relax for once, and grow our immune system, because then maybe you're not being exposed to enough foreign viruses or foreign bacteria. Maybe you do if you want to face those bigger, more threats like the coronavirus out there. I mean, you know how much we maybe sit indoors, maybe are exposed to one condition, one environment. We're not walking all over the place like our ancestors used to, trying to look for land or trying to look for that, or consuming raw meats that have tons of different bacteria on it. Okay, we're not like that anymore. Now we want to live in these sterile, little, clean environments. But do we know how it affects our immune system? And what is our immune system? It's our gut. It's our gut bacteria, which is what the father in Western medicine, God said, is the root to most of all disease. So that's very important then, that we nourish our gut. And most people will say probiotics and fermented foods. I agree, I agree. I think that's really important. But it's also by giving your immune system antioxidants like A, C, and E. Okay, particularly vitamin C we see is so important, and you'll only see more and more important as we go through this channel. I have other videos already on that issue. It's particularly the ones about sepsis and cancer, 1,000 times better than cancer drugs. You can check out those videos, please do. Very important. But like it says, opt for natural insect repellents, including essential oils of lemon, eucalyptus, cinnamon, tea tree, and citronella. There's even people who do permaculture, who do all these special forms of agriculture where they can build around these systems without having to use pesticides. Okay, these are modern food systems, or food systems that's been around for thousands of years but not commonly cultivated, because again, these agribusinesses own most of this industry, and it's about taking health into your own hands. And then if you technically want to take health into your own hands, you could actually grow your own food. You could actually connect with your local farmer, and then in the same regards, it helps the local economy and everything else. It's just the way life is meant to be, building that local community, having those local friends, having that community that you can rely on. And yes, say something does happen, let's say there is an economy collapse, let's say there is a big virus, you can all stand together and band together, and you all have the different tools and different things in your house so you can all help each other. But I don't see that in today's age. I don't see that bond that people have. But oftentimes it starts with the bond that you create with yourself, with your internal environment, with your body, okay, because that will reflect to that external environment, with other people, with the environment. So please power that immune system, more important now than ever. Okay, now it's also important to note that hidden emails reveal pesticide conspiracy. So I mentioned a lot of these companies. Let's look at the story real quick here. It says neon nicotinoids are the most widely used insecticides worldwide and have been implicated in bee deaths. Okay, so I mentioned bee deaths before, and it says as expose by the Intercept, which obtained lobbying documents and emails, revealed an extensive playbook used by the pesticide industry to downplay the pesticides' harms by influencing beekeepers, regulators, and academia. So again, they're taking control of what we once had. It's like they're literally taking control of us, so therefore we lose control of ourselves. Therefore we are becoming diseased because we feel dis-ease. We're supposed to have control over ourselves as conscious beings who are aware, but we can't because there's something blocking us. So you have all these blockades, and then there's people actively manipulating us to say, okay, well, you got to do this. Right, and the regulators, well, this must be happening, and if you don't have this, then this is what happens, right? And that's what contributes to actually a lot of the lawsuits in favor of Monsanto or these other biotech companies. There's many like Bayer, BASF, Syngenta. It's like it's very common now, and there's way more than that. Look at DuPont. Right, but regulators, okay, so they get into law, they get into politics. I told you, the FDA works with a lot of these companies. In fact, look at Monsanto, look at the heads of Monsanto, see that they actually worked for the FDA, they led the FDA. I mean, it's right in front of our faces. But these companies are often allowed to just do their own thing, as we know. And if they make it a regulatory law, like for example, oh, I own this pesticide, and you have an organic farm over there. The wind just all of a sudden spreaded my pesticide over to your farm, so now I could sue your farm because that is considered cross-contamination. That's just an example, right? But then academia, okay, well, you're training all these doctors, all these garden people, all these, agribusiness, whatever you want to call it. There's so many terms for it, right? But they train them specifically to what they want to train them. It's just like anything. But you see a doctor, okay, they don't learn about nutrition within their 8 years of schooling, maybe only an hour, and it's not even about, basic, nutrition. It's more maybe some anatomy, which is cool, and, don't get me wrong, all that stuff is important, but why not see the bigger picture? Because health means whole. That's the whole deal of it, the literally whole deal of it. But academia, right? What they're taught is what's going to be given to the world, and if they're not taught the right tools, then that's already down the drain. Okay, but it says entomologist Dennis Van Engelsdorp. This is the hardest words in the world, for goodness sake. Now a chief apiary inspector in Pennsylvania. Hey, Pennsylvania. And Jeffrey Pettis, a former USDA government scientist, were among the first to suggest a link between neonicotinoids and bee deaths. To be honest, I've never heard of that pesticide name, but I get it. It's one of the most popular. There's so many different types now. I mean, believe it or not, it's like over the years, you have the tripling of vaccines, you have companies changing their ingredient list. It's bizarre to me, but over just a couple of years, things have changed quite a lot, and it's because of consumer awareness, because of people wanting to change for the better, but also in a lot of ways that are not so good, as you see, as we're resulting in society with this whole political realm, tension building up, division, and whatever it may be. And then you see a lot more disease just keep growing, and nothing seems to be diminishing. You have to ask yourself, well, why is that? But, and then they'll say, well, okay, we're treating more people now than ever. And I've talked about this before, but how is that good? More people are sick now than ever. Again, being sick is a sign that, yes, something is going on. And if you don't fix it, then maybe it'll turn into something worse. I mean, definitely it will turn into something worse. You're not listening to what the universe is telling you. They're going to give you messages all the time, but it's a matter of if you're going to listen. But if you have all these things blockading you and kind of filtering out what you're hearing and filtering out what you're seeing, all your senses are gone. And then what are you? Just a senseless robotic machine? Well, that's exactly what you become. And Van Engelsdorp later reversed his stance, became tied to the pesticide industry, spinning their stance that varroa mites, not pesticides, were to blame. So just a whole bunch of industry drama. And it says Pettis also experienced industry pressure to speak only about varroa mites. His career was suddenly derailed after he presented testimony about these pesticides before the House Agriculture Committee in 2014 and didn't stick to the script, right? Because you're told what to do, you're told what to teach, you're told what to say, you're told what to give people. This is the idea, is that you have no self-control and you must take it from somebody else. Why is my light dying? Anyways, looking at this, let's see, do I have any other notes on this? No. Okay, but you see, even there's a book on this website, Mercola. It says, take control of your health. There's a reason why that is the title of this, the slogan of this website, take control, because it's all about self-control. And EMF, well, it's a funny name, but it's true. EMF pollution, which you're talking rays, things coming from cell phones and computer devices or anything like that. Even smart meters have been blowing houses on fire, believe it or not, and they want to make it required to put it on every block so everybody can get this amazing 5G coverage. They talk about all the amazing benefits of it and how it's completely safe. Meanwhile, there's a ton of studies about it. Meanwhile, I even did a video on it. That was one of my first videos on the channel about how an ex-Microsoft leader, I believe the CEO, right, said that 5G is clearly dangerous. I mean, he said this in a video. It's undeniable, but there's also way more people than that, so we have to question it, and you'll never see that on the mainstream media. So what else, Well, it's our children. They're learning at a young age what to think, what to believe. And so it says the EPA fails to follow landmark law to protect children from pesticides in food. So we see these pesticides affecting everything in your health, from death, from all causes, from cardiovascular disease, which is most common. And then you see mental problems, anxiety and depression and psychology and all this, right? Like children then can't learn, and then therefore they're just told what to say, told what to do, told what to think, and it just goes right to them because they're penetratable. They're vulnerable at a young age, but they're even more vulnerable when they're disease filled, when they are unable to think for themselves, right? That's why it took me a lot of time to do that, right? But it takes a whole lot of other people a lot of time to do that. And it's not easy in a world where we're just filled with distraction and we let ourselves be controlled by these forces. So it's all about self-control. Since the EPA has failed to add the mandated children's health safety factor to the allowable limits for almost 90% of the most common pesticides. So there you go. Just again, just an example then of bad regulation, but it is on our part bad humanity, not following our duty, our listening to the natural world that we were given. Okay, it's us trying to be God instead of working with God, for example, whatever you may say that God may be. And I really appreciate everybody that listens in, everybody that has an open mind to the different information, everybody that has their own opinion on everything. That's the beauty of it. You don't need to agree with anything. You can do your own research if you disagree, if you don't know. That's the whole idea, is to get ideas out there, planted seeds for trees to grow, okay? Ideas out there so that people can explore this whole new realm for themselves, like I did and like our family has done. And it's become a journey to where we wanted to be, to where we wanted to grow. And that's exactly how it has manifested within our lives. Is we attract it, we want it, it gives to us because we seek it. We are listening to the universe that we are living in. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it. Nature's the Answer, Cory, Edmund, Endrulat. Thank you.